Hi, I'm Sridhar Krishnan. I work as a writing tutor at the Center for Writing and Communication. Today, I just wanted to share a few books from my shelf. These are books that have touched me and helped me sail through tough times, both academically and personally. First book I have is Anita and Me by Meera Syal. Anita and Me is really personal to me because it talks about hyphenated identities. It talks about diasporas, and although I was never part of India's, international diaspora, I did grow up in a space where my mother tongue was not spoken, where I had to constantly switch codes. So until I was 6 years old, I actually thought Hindi was a language spoken outside of home, and within the confines of home, it has to be another language, which in my case was Malayalam. Anita and Me follows a narrative from a 9-year-old's point of view, and it's incredible. I mean, Meera Syal was, I think, perhaps 30 plus when she actually wrote it, and to write a novel from a 9-year-old's perspective is so challenging, but it is witty, it's moving, it really resonates as within me, because questions of identity and belonging are not easy questions to grapple with. And when you are yourself too foreign to be in your hometown, it becomes a complex process to digest or to navigate. And hence I would say this is a book that I would suggest anybody who likes looking at fluidity of identities and hyphenated identities. The second book I have is also a novel. This is Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. It won the Man Booker, and it's part of a trilogy. It's the first installment in a trilogy. Its second novel of the trilogy also won the Man Booker. I like this book because I'm very interested in history, and I also like reading literature. And this book helped me through a very tough period of COVID-induced lockdown way back in April, May 2020. I had seen thrillers before, but I had not read a thriller before, and this was one of those. Mantel's book is very interesting because it traverses this fine line between fact and fiction. She is repackaging the old beaten to death Tudor drama of Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, but her point of view is Thomas Cromwell, who is usually seen as a villain. The book, although is fiction, it is a novel, but it is a product of intense research. So if you read in the book that King Henry VIII was at, say, Lambeth on such and such a date, there is historical record to suggest that he was actually there. It is incredibly difficult to weave your imagination within, facts, within established facts, and Mantel does it brilliantly. One particular strategy she employs is to use present tense, and that's why the book is so visual. I recall an interview that Mantel had given where she says, the first image she had in mind was Cromwell bleeding on the cobbles, a 15-year-old Cromwell, his abusive father. And that's why the book is very easy to read, because it gives, you are actually there as the story progresses. Unlike, I'm not a fan of thrillers in general. I'm a very unpopular opinion, but I do not like Game of Thrones. But that's also because most thrillers tend to give this inkling that, this is not how it's going to pan out. This novel is brilliant because it takes you on the journey. It is not misleading. You discover things as Cromwell discovers things, and that's why I would recommend Wolf Hall to anybody who likes history and fiction, or generally who's going through a tough time and needs something to be hooked upon. That was the last novel. I'll go on to more academic books now. Holidays in the Danger Zone by Debbie Lyle is a book that I love reading. I've revisited multiple times, partially because it speaks to my own research interest into tourism, into urban politics and international relations. Also because it investigates international politics and international relations at a space where it's really not thought of as existing. We usually think of tourism as the antonym of conflict, in a sense where there is conflict, one does not expect tourism. Debbie Lyle actually tries to debunk that myth and looks at how tourism thrives actually in areas of conflicts. The book is actually pretty vast in terms of the themes and the empirical areas that it covers. It takes a view of colonialism, empire, goes down to contemporary conflicts such as the one in the Middle East and North Africa. It also considers Cyprus, etc. The book is very essential for us as scholars in general to see tourism as something that is deeply political, and on a broader point of view to see leisure as an inherently political activity. The next book I want to discuss is Interrogating International Relations by Dr. Jayashree Vivekanandan. Dr. Vivekanandan, or JV as I call her, was also my PhD supervisor. I like this book. As a PhD supervisors normally tend to do, she has had a huge influence on my academic life and trajectory. But what is very intriguing for me regarding this book is I did not work on medieval history, and this book makes a case of connecting Indian medieval history, especially Akbar's reign, to the study of international politics. JV begins with the premise that historical international relations of India is studied almost exclusively from the point of view of ancient history, and then there seems to be a long jump into colonialism and modern history, while the medieval period is seen as a period where Indians did not strategize. JV tries to debunk that myth in this book. What I particularly like about this book is apart from the empirics and arguments, this book has given me a lot of quotable quotes. It has taught me how to articulate myself. And many a times the quotes I've drawn from this book are not JV's own, but these are also quotes that she has dug up as scholar and as a researcher. So one of my favorite definitions of colonialism comes from this book. She cites a poet who described colonialism as a form of civilization that drove forward in a mortuary cart. A biting, gripping critique of colonialism that comes out of this book, and in general of how Indians have thought about strategic culture of South Asia. The next book I want to talk about is Translating Museums, A Counter History of South Asian Museology by Shaila Bhatti. I discovered this book in mid-2020 when the pandemic was still ongoing, and it came as a huge relief because I had just given in my PhD synopsis, and my PhD was about a single museum, and I was wondering, confused, tensed, whether one museum would have enough meat to go into a PhD thesis, and that's when I discovered this lovely book. Shaila Bhatti looks at the history of Lahore Museum, contextualizes it within the South Asian museumscapes, and gives a critique of Western museological outlook. The book is very influential, not only because it focuses on one museum, which is Lahore Museum, which popularly is called Ajaib Ghar or Wonder House, but also because Shaila ji is now a dear friend. I remember meeting her at a conference where we were panelists together, going up to her very tensed and said, I wasn't sure it was her, and I asked her, excuse me, are you Shaila Bhatti by any chance? And she says yes, and I couldn't control myself, and I said I'm a huge fan. What this book has also taught me is to humanize the scholars and authors that we read, that they are human, that they laugh, they read other stuff, they are on Instagram, they send memes, and that's sometimes very important because I had no idea how Shaila Bhatti looked like, despite having read this book multiple times, until I met her in person. And I think we need to give faces to the scholars and books that we read, and this book eventually led me to do that. During my master's, an author I've just discussed, Jayashree Vivekanandan, offered this course called Culture and World Politics, where we discussed a unit on politics of display. And there, this book was part of our required readings, International Relations, where we least expect it, by Christine Sylvester. At that time, I was working on historical state formation in Nepal, a topic that I enjoyed, but I was not very passionate about. And this reading forced me to think about the role of museums in international relations. We see IR as something that happens in diplomatic channels or in conflicts, but why not look at something around us, museums? The book makes a very compelling case to see disciplines as collages rather than organized corpus of knowledge. It encourages us to de-amplify disciplinary silos and to think creatively and in a manner that is transdisciplinary over interdisciplinary. What I particularly appreciate about this book is that it covers a breadth of cases, from MoMA in New York, which is a museum of modern art, British Museum, and museums in Spain, how the Iraq conflict led to the Baghdad Museum's objects being shifted to the West for safekeeping, and the politics around it. But what it also lacked was, a tale of museums around us, because we also have museums down here in South Asia, which I think needed discussion from an IR point of view, or at least from the point of view of political science. And that's what led me to my PhD. So I would recommend this book to anyone who's interested in politics, but also this, despite being an academic read, is a very good read when you're traveling. So if you are on a long haul flight, make sure you grab a copy of this. I discovered this book again when I was doing my master's in international politics in this course called Politics of Knowing Your World by Dr. Shaumata Basu. We read 3 to 4 chapters from this book. Written by feminist scholars of memory, actually not written, edited by feminist scholars of memory, Jenny Atkins and Maya Zeffis. This book is a brilliant and refreshing introduction to international relations. Most primers on international relations take a theoretical approach. You start from, more often than not, you start from realism, you go on to liberalism, constructivism, and other approaches like post-colonialism, comes more like a postscript. So does feminism. But this book is organized around questions that we ask in our day-to-day lives. Questions such as, how do we end poverty? Why is the world divided territorially? And each of these questions are explored through illustrative case studies. This book is also a brilliant primer because each of the chapters are written by people who've made significant strides within the areas of specialization. So for instance, the chapter on colonialism is by Shankaran Krishna, and so on. But what is also interesting is it forces you to rethink about the politics around you. If you think you follow politics by watching the news or, reading, getting information from the internet, how do we overcome the information bias there? How do we discern patterns of politics and try to make our research more thorough or our awareness more thorough and critical? How do we question things that we know, and how do we unlearn? This book, I think, is a brilliant introduction to that. And again, this is fit for light reading if you're an academic or not. But this book is also fit for students of international politics who've just started off thinking about doing IR in more creative and critical ways. So these are the 7 books that I think should make its way from my bookshelves to yours. And I hope at least a couple of them end up actually in your bookshelf. Thank you.